This field under the Scarlet Sunset is a quest that was failed by a group of 40 of the strongest players. The quest was nicknamed the Curse of the Scorched Earth, and only one candidate won it. The warrior-class player swung his sword deftly, using the lightning element. The guy skillfully cut down the monsters and waited for the boss of this quest. All previous opponents were just a mass that no one could overcome. His power was described online as that of an absolute monarch, owning and protecting 21 castles. With just one step, he could destroy an entire state and gain the recognition of hundreds of thousands of people. His name is So Hyun, a top-ranked player in the game Asura Online. The player boldly went after large monsters alone, without seeking support from other teams. For his strength, courage, and solo work, he was nicknamed the King of the Asura world. But one day he received a notification from the game that he had finished the 1836-year war alone. And he was outraged that, despite all his greatness, there were so few online players that he couldn't even achieve fame. There are less than 300 characters left in the game, so our hero also thought about leaving forever. The game was incredibly cool in our hero's opinion, but even the community abandoned it. Of course, the hero did not deny some nuances, such as the less-than-ideal implementation of virtual reality. The game had a scale, world-building, and story that was superior to anything else out there at the time. The hero was browsing the internet when he received an advert for pre-ordering the new game Azrian. The name was very similar to the name of his favorite game, which alerted the guy. The new game promised the world's first sensitivity synchronization mechanism. The guy went to the official website to watch the teaser of the game, and was amazed to see a character from Azra. He also saw the ancient dragon Kerberos and other characters, skills, locations, and even NPCs were from Azra. Our hero was overjoyed that his favorite game had been reborn in a new format. Although there were new locations and skills, the guy easily calculated the structure of the world of Azra. Then So Hyun had the idea that the quests in the game could have remained the same. If the basis remained from the old game, then the boy's knowledge was invaluable. The guy knew all the nooks and crannies of Azra, so he decided to show what a deadly first rank meant. There were 5 days left before the game's release, and the hero spent all this time searching for information about it. The guy studied all the hidden quests, characters, items, combinations, and achievements of the old version of the game. In the new game, the hero began his journey under the name Hyun. The journey in the new game began in a large, bright hall with a huge statue. The majestic hall and light, as well as the simple clothes on the character, indicated the beginning of the game. And then a star appeared, the bright light of which signified the appearance of a local deity. Hen immediately realized that this was the NPC angel who appears at the very beginning of the game. A beautiful maiden greeted a wanderer from another dimension. But to Hyun, the girl seemed incredibly familiar. He had clearly met her quite recently. Although the angel introduced herself as Caruel, the guy remembered her old name, Kydriel. Apparently the maiden realized that she had been found out, and at that very moment her image of a saint began to crumble. And along with the maiden's appearance, everything around her began to crack. The white robe was replaced by an open black dress, and the wings turned crimson. The guy recognized the one whose identity was revealed in the last quest of the old game. The girl's appearance and haughty smile dispelled all doubts that the demoness Kydriel stood before Hen. But the guy didn't understand why the final boss was actually at the beginning of the new game. The demoness was extremely shocked that someone had managed to expose her. But be that as it may, Hyun was struck by a strange feeling at the sight of the demoness. The guy immediately realized that his body was shaking due to the synchronization of sensitivity. The demoness demanded that the guy quickly choose a character class. A sword, a knife, a cross, and a staff appeared before Hen for him to choose from. This meant choosing between the warrior, rogue, mage, and priest classes. Hen was glad that the game wouldn't start with instant death at the hands of the demoness. However, the guy was alarmed by everything that was happening, since in the previous game, there was no such thing as randomness. Hen knew that if he activated the hidden quest, he would receive a special reward, but the quest clearly hadn't been activated yet. Hen started turning his head and looking for a hint about what conditions needed to be met to help him open the quest. Suddenly he noticed that there were rugs everywhere instead of carpets. Hen remembered that before the demoness turned, there was a statue in that place. Then the guy decided to take a closer look at the place and went towards it. However, the demoness blocked his path with her wings. The guy was surprised by the NPC's independent behavior, which also required him to choose his role. The guy realized that the demoness was worried. She clearly didn't want to let the guy near that rug. But now the guy was sure that his guess was correct. The guy noted that he had no time limit, and he had the right to look around. And although the demoness tried to stop Hen, he still went to the place of the missing statue. The demoness was worried, but all she could do was look at the guy's back. The girl watched with obvious displeasure as the guy went to give her more work. As soon as Hen stepped on the rug, the wall immediately began to crack. Something was clearly coming from behind the wall towards the guy and frightening him. As soon as the wall collapsed, a stream of bright light burst out, and the guy covered his face with his hand. Hen found a hidden camera, and now the number of classes he could choose from increased. Hen had long noticed that the game only offered a slot for one character, meaning players would have to pay for more. Hen has long noticed that the game's founders know a thing or two about how to make money from games. Objects representing hidden classes appeared before the guy. The demoness sat on her throne, and the guy thought about what kind of weapon would be beneficial in the later stages. The girl was already quite irritated by the guy's presence, so she rushed him. But the guy was not so simple. He suspected something and headed towards the demoness. There was something behind the demoness that attracted the guy's attention with a strong aura. Then the girl, trying to hide something behind her, spread her wings again. But this didn't stop the guy again, and he walked forward, emerging into some hidden portal. The demoness did not expect such audacity and confidence, so she shouted after the guy to stop. Hen meanwhile went out to another weapon, a hidden class one. There was a sword in front of the guy, but in 8 years of playing he had never seen one like it in the previous version. Hen believed that his title as Dimension Destroyer was his last. But now before him stood an object that marked a new and impressive class. The boy learned that Kidriel was actually the archdemon of deception. This lady, as expected, deceived people and fed on their despair. Now the guy had a hidden support class. Only now he had a class he knew nothing about, and that was a problem. And the demoness was already laughing out loud at the boy and his self-confidence, which led him to this strange role. The newly converted support demanded that the demoness tell her about the new class. But she just laughed, said goodbye, and was gone. Now the guy was left alone with his new class and self-confidence. A support can be considered a support for the team, but not an independent character. And this was a big problem for a solo player. Once the class was determined, the character was sent into the woods to gain experience. The guy held on with all his might, encouraging himself with the thought that the class was hidden for a reason, and therefore had its advantages. Hen hoped that there was some tremendous combat power hidden within his support class. So first the guy opened the status window to figure things out, but the stats and skills were incredibly weak. No character in the previous game had such low stats. Hen even doubted that they were real. But here they were in front of him, and it was painful to look at them. Since level 50 was required to obtain the ult, the guy decided to start leveling up. First, the guy tried small NPCs and how strong they are in this world. Hen provoked the slime to test his new Sky God defense skills. The slime rushed at the guy and the barrier was activated. However, his power was not enough, and the slime broke through the defense, attacking the guy. But now the guy learned that he can strengthen the defense of a chosen target and become immortal for a moment. The guy counterattacked, swinging his blade and inflicting at least minor wounds on the enemy. And just when the hero thought he had won, the slime immediately began to heal itself. And then the slime attacked the guy, and he immediately decided to use his second shield skill. And it turned out to be much more effective, pushing the slime away from the hero. Having realized the benefit of the skill, the guy decided to finally finish with the slime. The guy pounced on the slime and began to attack it so that it would not have time to heal. The guy beat the slime with his blade for a long time and was glad to see that only a couple of blows remained to finish it off. But suddenly something stuck into the slime in front of him and finished it off, taking away all the effort and experience from the slime to the other player. Hen turned around, trying to see who was involved in the commotion unfolding behind him. The hero who killed the slime. Hen laughed and apologized for the sake of appearances and ran on. But Hen was surprised that a newbie like him killed the slime with the first blow, while he had to put in a lot of effort. With such skills, the guy clearly wouldn't get very far, so he decided he needed a damage dealer partner. Hen needed someone with good fighting instincts and the ability to set the pace in battle. But judging by the players in this game, there was nothing to gain. In the previous game, Hen was familiar with the second-rank Ain, who had the appearance of a werewolf. Therefore, the hero returned to the previous game, although he thought that he would not return there anytime soon. Hen wrote to Ain and a meeting was arranged at the Colosseum, where sparring and fighting usually took place. This outraged Hen, because the comrades had not seen each other for a long time, and now they were meeting to fight. In any case, Hen had already started to tell that he had called his friend for one offer. But instead of shaking hands to greet him, my friend activated his predator skill. And then Ain soared high into the sky to attack from above. At high speed, the werewolf rushed at the guy and attacked him with his claws, but Hen easily dodged. The werewolf's skill was at the highest level, and even tore the ground apart, and the knight easily jumped away. Then Hen decided to summon his sword to fight his old friend. When his comrades took up positions at a distance, our support again tried to reproach his friend. But the werewolf was busy recovering to attack again. As soon as the health bar was full, Ain immediately rushed into attack again. However, he came across Hen's strong shield, which had already reached the highest level. After which, with the blessing skill, Hen swung his sword at his comrade. Although the werewolf skillfully covered himself with his hands and avoided a direct blow, he was pushed back. Hen finally suggested talking, but Ain clearly had no intention of talking yet. In an instant, both combatants jumped high into the sky to attack. Both opponents used their strongest skills to attack. Both were injured by each other, which they later discussed over a glass of beer. However, Ain refused to admit that he had carried out the attack later than Hen. However, Hen finally turned the conversation to the topic that was worrying him about the new game. Hen tried his best to describe the advantages of the new game in order to convince his friend. However, Ain was indignant at his friend for how he could abandon him and exchange him for another game. But Hen explained that he simply decided to try out the new game as an older friend. And now he offers Aina to participate in a new game again as an alliance. But the werewolf doesn't understand why his friend is offering him the role of a magician, and not a berserker, in which he had experience. Hen was glad that he had almost succeeded in convincing his friend. However, to fully convince him, I had to lie about my comrade's unique abilities in control. Ain turned out to be very weak to obvious flattery and took it for reality. However, Ain was not so simple either. He agreed to participate, but only because he knew that his comrade was very smart. Once agreement had been reached, Hen began to tell a more detailed story. First of all, Hen talked about his own experience and meeting with Cadriel. A few days later, the comrades agreed to meet in the magical village of Libya. Hen stood in the main square and looked out for his friend, whom he was supposed to meet in the new game. Hen checked his correspondence, and remembered that he had forgotten to put on his feather headband. Ain should have spotted his friend in the crowd of players by the feather headband. Suddenly, someone spoke to Hen from behind, and he turned around. In front of Hen stood a tall, handsome young man, who matched the hero's image. Hen, of course, happily rushed to shake his comrade's hand, not his paw. But suddenly it turned out that there was an NPC in front of him, and Ain was nearby, and due to his height, almost went unnoticed. The girl removed her hood and introduced herself, stating that she was glad to meet him. Small in stature, with short hair and eyes full of energy, it was difficult to connect the image of a huge werewolf with the small young girl who appeared. To be sure, Hen still asked a couple of clarifying questions. Of course, the girl answered easily, but she didn't understand why the guy was asking. Then Hyun had to admit that he was surprised that she was Ain's girlfriend, but he was much more concerned about what class the girl had chosen. Ain chose a hidden mage class, an unusual one at that, with close combat skills. And among the skills there was a note that Ain managed to outsmart Cadriel, and this was alarming. And while Hen was wondering what kind of strange abilities Ain had, she was already having fun with the torches in her hands. But suddenly the flame went out, and the girl was surprised at how quickly her strength ran out. And then Hen realized that it would be difficult to teach the former berserker the abilities of a magician. Ain was already ready to go train, but Hen delayed her since they were at level 60. Ain then suggested going to another city, but was again refused by Hen. Meanwhile, Hen was thinking that he should first make sure that Ain could deal enough damage. Hen had been in the game longer, so he went through all the platforms he was familiar with. He finally decided to have a friendly sparring session. Energetic Ain was delighted with the duel, as she was always happy to fight. The change in mood surprised Hen very much, but also made him happy. The only thing the girl was worried about was that her support comrade wouldn't be able to fight back. But since Hen promised to give it his all in the duel, Ain was glad, because she herself did not know how to hold back. As soon as confirmation for the duel from the game was received, the comrades took up positions. Ain was the first to rush into battle, her hands blazing with fire. Ain was delighted to wave her new fiery claws. And while Ain was thinking about having fun, Hen was thinking about checking the damage indicators and allowed himself to be hit. It wasn't that Hen was surprised, but he was surprised that Ain had wiped out his health bar with one blow. But due to the sensitivity synchronization, the damage was painful. Ain completely forgot about this ability of the game, but she was worried about the quick victory and demanded a second duel. In the next duel, Hen promised to give it his all and not give in. In that case, Ain rushed at Hen again like a berserker. Hen decided not to defend himself, but simply dodge and get away from the frontal attack. Hen noted that the game's movements are slow, and that this leaves many vulnerable spots. But Hen decided that the problem was not so much with the game, but with Ain, who had not yet gotten used to her abilities. Moreover, the girl was angry that she couldn't hit her friend, and he simply dodged. Hen knew how Ain would attack, but was shocked when she suddenly disappeared from sight. The girl clearly increased her speed and was now using flames with her foot. Since this attack couldn't be dodged, Hen used a shield. To Ain's surprise, the shield pushed her away and dealt enough damage that the guy won. Ain refused to admit such a defeat, but she also noted that you can't catch an enemy like that twice. Hen praised Ain's fighting skills and abilities, which flattered the girl. Ain begged Hen to go hunting. She wanted to level up as quickly as possible. The heroes came to a castle that was surrounded by an army of skeletons, and Aang was worried that they were finding something in a level 60 ghost port, and there was nothing for them to catch here. But how surprised she was when Hen assured her that they had not come here to hunt, as she had thought. But then he clarified that they don't need to hunt directly. They can level up indirectly. Hen tried to explain more simply, and pointed to the castle in front of them. At the very top of the castle were the guards that Hen wanted to use. Hen decided to set the guards on the skeletons, even though new games prohibit gaining experience this way. However, the new game is a copy of the old one, where this loophole has not yet been fixed. Ian was surprised, but also glad that they could now level up quickly. To begin with, Hen and Aang tracked down a group of skeletons. They really needed a level 80 ghost commander. And to get his attention, they hit him on the top of the head from behind. Of course, Aang hit with her new fire ability. The heroes needed to attack the commander, because only there could they provoke the entire army. Hen managed to warn his friend that due to the synchronization of feelings, Aang could become paralyzed with fear. Therefore, Aang needed to maintain distance and control. As soon as the numbness subsided, Aang rushed towards Hen as fast as she could, as they had agreed. Luckily, the girl managed to quickly run to her friend. Now the plan was to split up so that the skeletons wouldn't surround them. However, Aang understood that the entire army of undead was now concentrated on her. But Hen was distracted from the dialogue, covering him and Aang with a shield from the arrows flying at them. Since this attack was hitting back at the skeletons, Hen was now also a target. Now Hen and Aang needed to run under the fortress and provide themselves with protection. Meanwhile, there was a changing of the guard at the post, and ordinary NPCs were behaving like real players. The officer scolded his subordinates for being late, listened to apologies, etc. But suddenly the guard on the tower noticed that something was approaching the castle. When everyone looked closely, they saw an army of undead running towards the main entrance. The guards quickly noticed the commander-in-chief of the ghost army, and the castle immediately prepared for an attack. But Aang began to worry that they wouldn't make it in time. The skeletons were already hot on their heels, but Hen assured his friend that there was very little left. But the castle began to attack earlier, and Hen shouted to her friend to dodge. With just one blow, the castle burned an entire army to a skeleton, and the commander too. Our heroes managed to run behind the fence that surrounded the fortress. Aang grumbled at Hen for the risky plan, as they almost ended up on barbecue. But suddenly she noticed 100 bright notifications in front of her, and each of them was screaming about improving their skills and leveling up. Aang was amazed by her friend's ingenuity and rejoiced like a child. Hen explained that even from a small attack, they gained a lot of experience for the entire army. Our heroes sat behind the fence for a while, thinking about how lucky they were to have escaped the attack. As soon as they both caught their breath, they set off to meet their next adventures. But before moving on, Hen decided to take a closer look at the game and his performance. Hen also looked at the game news and didn't find anything useful on the forums. Now he was interested in the topic of critical hit and the conditions for it. Aang was an experienced melee fighter. It would clearly be easy for her to score a critical hit with every attack. But Hen didn't know whether he should tell her about this. Hen was waiting for Aang again in the square, and was discussing the fact that it was time to spend his skill points. Finally, the guy received a notification that Aang had entered the game. Judging by the time the girl enters the game, she is a student. Finally, Aang stood before her comrade and declared that she was ready to hunt ghosts again. The girl was impressed by how the heroes had leveled up yesterday, so she wanted to repeat it. Aang was pleased that in 3 days in the game she managed to level up to level 40. However, Aang had never heard of such monsters before, and was surprised by the new addition to the game. These monsters are stronger than usual and give cool rewards for them. In addition, they are hunted by guilds. Aang immediately realized that her friend was aiming for the reward for the first kill. But Hen hastened to put a stop to his friend's unhealthy enthusiasm. The guy understood that they still had to choose their opponents wisely. But Aang was too active a girl, always ready for a fight, so this was the last thing she cared about. The girl was already eager to fight, but Hen held her back, because they still had to choose an opponent for the first battle. First, Hen became interested in learning about Aang's skill points, but the guy missed a couple of points and was unhappy about it. Aang was also struck by this shortage, although she herself had not counted such things. But then the girl remembered that she had invested them in pumping up her strength. And Hen fell into extreme confusion, because his friend was now not a berserker, but a magician. The girl tried to make an excuse, saying she did it out of habit and asked for forgiveness. Under the guy's gaze, Aang felt extremely stupid, so she came up with excuses as best she could. Hen decided to pull himself together, and now ordered the girl to obey only him. So they had to sit in the square and properly level up Aang's character. Aang could now deal up to 500 damage with her fiery claws. According to Hen's calculations, they will now spend up to 5 minutes on the boss. Meanwhile, Ain was languishing with boredom and demanded that the adventure begin. The game featured users Helldust and Arneg, who were delighted with their earnings from the game. In 3 months, they managed to achieve a salary equal to that of a regular job. But besides money, they also wanted fame, as a player with level 35 in 10th place in the top players. The guys haven't made any money yet, but they've already started planning to buy a car and a building. Suddenly their comrade appeared, who had been running towards them for a long time. The boy stated that the guild was meeting to discuss a raid on a named monster. The guys were from the Hygen Guild, which was not numerous. All the guild members gathered in one room, and the leader talked about the raid. Not all the members of the hall were in the hall yet. The guild's gathering was unexpected. It turns out that a few days ago, one of the guild members found a place with a strange shrine. So now everyone will be involved in the hunt for the boss named Leopard. The entire guild's work was suspended so that everyone could kill the boss first. Our heroes also chose the order in which to hunt the named monsters. Hen was sure that the first one should be the boss of the Dark Forest Sanctuary. None of those presented above could even imagine how the planned hunt would end. The youngest boy in the guild will hide behind a column and hold back his screams. The guy has to watch as the bodies of his comrades fall unconscious, and only the question of how the entire guild ended up helpless against one boss will torment him. Just a few hours ago, the guild members were happily walking through the forest towards the boss. Among the whole crowd were the already known to us Dust and Arneg. One of them was worried that the attack was planned in 2 stages, and the other one with Tartar supported him, that it could be done in one go. Since Tartar still doubted his abilities, his comrades supported him. As soon as the guild approached the shrine, the commander stopped everyone. Everyone understood that as soon as they tried to open the doors, the quest would begin, and they would be attacked. This was the first sortie, so the commander demanded that everyone be attentive to all sensations. The quest gates slowly opened before the guild members. The guild members slowly walked up the bridge that led to the central square of the sanctuary. Before the brawl began, the commander warned that no one worked alone. The first problem for the guild members was the thick fog through which it was difficult to see anything. And then everyone felt the pressure of the boss's power. But the commander brought everyone back to their senses. Then the players were attacked with cold, which made them move very slowly, and ice. And even when everything calmed down, the team members understood that a powerful attack would soon break out. But first, a pentagram appeared, through which the boss was supposed to appear. The commander warned that bosses affect sensations, so everyone needs to be on guard. The boss was a named mage named Leopard, who was extremely unhappy at being disturbed. But no matter how the guild tried to strengthen itself, the boss's power paralyzed everyone. But the commander proved more resilient, and was already shouting to his comrades to form a battle formation. Since they had already been slowed down, the commander demanded that long-range spells be prepared. While the commander was giving orders to his comrades, the magician was preparing to attack. Arneg flew towards the boss, expecting that his new sword would be able to cut him down. But the guy couldn't even imagine that his heart would be pierced in an instant, and he wouldn't even have time to see it. Such a quick murder frightened everyone, but the commander urged everyone to hold on. However, for the magician this was only the beginning. He prepared ice shards for the next attack. The commander ordered the tanks to protect the damage dealers, but it was too late. When the commander looked around, one after another, his comrades fell. And when the commander turned around, all his comrades were lying dead on the ground. And while the commander was wondering who could defeat the magician, the latter was bored. To defeat this boss you needed at least level 70, and 30 is the same as the commander. The only one left alive from the guild was Tartar, who hid behind a column. The boy was scared when he saw Arneg killed and didn't want to suffer the same pain. Tartar was also worried that he would now be kicked out of the guild for being useless. So the guy was thinking about attacking and dying after all. Tartar understood that it was a game, but he was still scared and didn't want to die. Finally, the guy decided that he didn't want to be known as a weakling, and it was time to act. And just as the boy was about to jump out from behind the column, 2 people entered the sanctuary. Ain and Hen entered the sanctuary of the Dark Forest, looking around. Hen, as always, was analyzing everything around him, and Ain was already rushing forward into battle. The area was empty, and Ain was worried that the boss had been killed. But Hen knew that the boss was level 95, and was still too much for the guilds to handle. However, before the heroes faced the boss, Hen decided to discuss the plan. The mage was shocked to see a couple of surviving players after his massive attack. The leopard immediately attacked Ain and Hen, just like Arneg before. However, Ain easily dodged his ice ball, which hit the boss. But the magician didn't even realize that this was no ordinary girl in front of him. Then the magician decided to repeat the attack and collected mana in his staff. Of course, Hen, as a support, immediately activated the skill of 1-second immortality. Thanks to him, Ain managed to block the ice that was flying at him. The problem for the heroes was that Hen's skill did not guarantee a complete block of Leopard's attack. The only way out is to deflect the blow at an angle, and this requires Ain's incredible reflexes. Even Ain herself had doubts about this plan when she first heard about it. Ain didn't like to act according to a plan. She preferred to enjoy the surprise of a fight. But when, during the battle, she realized the convenience of Hen's plan, she was happy. Hen was glad to see that his friend was coping and even enjoying the fight. But suddenly the magician attacked Hen, and the boy barely managed to dodge. It was still difficult for Hen to both dodge and maintain his skill. Meanwhile, Ain came up behind the magician and attacked him with fiery claws. The magician was confident in his powers, so he was surprised that someone managed to hit him. But this awakened the magician's desire to fight at full strength. The mage used an ice shield and Ain immediately retreated, asking Hen for advice. The guy assured her that he could handle the shield, and Ain should wait for his command. The magician didn't know what to expect from the new players on his quest, so he got scared when the guy ran towards him. Hen had long since realized that the mage's first attacks could be stopped with a second of immortality, and if he also engages in close combat, he will interrupt the mage's spell. As soon as the mage's shield fell, Hen commanded Ain to attack the enemy, and our lighter was just waiting for this, and with fury immediately rushed into battle. In an instant, she dealt several critical blows to the old man. Ain didn't just hit, she aimed at vital points, so the old man began to spit out blood. As soon as the girl saw the result of her work, she immediately believed in her and Hen's victory. Hen himself was also happy about this, and continued to support his friend. But the old man was not level 95 for nothing, because he immediately began casting a new spell. First of all, the leopard raised a blizzard around him, which protected him. Ain hoped that the old man was almost dead, but Hen knew that it was time for the final phase. The old man continued to whip up the blizzard, and chunks of ice grew all over the sanctuary. The leopard was ready to use the rest of his strength to kill the players. Hen waited for the old man's final attack in the form of an icy floor. He had already briefed Ain on the events, and the girl was ready. At the first signal from her friend, she immediately rushed into attack. The old man tried to attack, but the support covered her, and the girl easily went into the top attack. The old man only had time to notice the girl, and the next moment she landed contentedly behind him. Dissolving into the nothingness of the game, the old man did not understand how mortals had managed to defeat him. Meanwhile, our heroes rejoiced at the plaque that marked their victory. Ain was more than anyone else overjoyed at the victory, especially since the two-person team was awarded extra points for the victory. And Tartar continued to watch everything from behind the column. The guy was thinking about posting a video of the heroes online, but the boy had no idea that this couple had already managed to kill 18 bosses. Now they had 9 rare items and 1 unique one, and Hen was thinking about how to distribute them. Hen offered Ain to take 1 unique item, and he would take all the others. The cost would be the same. But Ain was used to fighting with her hands and didn't understand what to do with the staff. Hen thought that the girl would worry about the distribution of the spoils. But Ain was ready to accept any decision her friend made. Since the distribution of the loot was finished, Hen suggested buying new equipment. Our heroes set off for the largest city in the magical kingdom of Lupra. Ain was amazed by the beauty of the city, so she ran to see the sights, but suddenly the girl's path was blocked by guards. The guard announced that dark priests like our heroes were forbidden from entering the city. Hen and Ain couldn't believe that they were mistaken for dark priests. Dark priests use the powers of evil, so regular NPCs are not particularly inclined towards them. Their class is associated with heretics, so they often face restrictions. Hen immediately tried to explain that their clothes were received as basic ones from the game. Only after this did the guard reluctantly let our heroes through. However, everyone in the city looked at them with apprehension, and this embarrassed Hen and Ain. Our heroes finally reached the sorcerer's shop, where they were joyfully greeted by an NPC. The first thing Hen wanted to do was change clothes, and the NPC immediately sent them there. The appearance of a magic circle under the heroes frightened them. But when they found themselves in the locker room, Hen immediately realized that the NPC sorcerer was of a very high level. Without thinking, Hen immediately began to change clothes, which embarrassed his friend. Noticing that Ain still hadn't gone to change, the guy hurried her. But before leaving, Ain glanced at the clothes Hen had taken off. Hen planned to merge his clothes with the obtained shimmering water dragon breastplate. After paying 2,000 gold, the sorceress began the process of creating a rare item. The armor shone, shimmered, and sparkled. The fusion process in the game was very colorful. However, the merger failed, which upset Hen. So Ed decided to try another one with the volume of the fallen priest Dale, and then the remaining rare items, but each time he failed. Hen had already decided that the merger was a scam, but Ain successfully passed the merger on the first try. Now the girl had a unique brown leather glove. Hen couldn't believe that he had lost all his items, but his friend got the result on the first try. Since Ain was lucky, she decided to transform something else. The sorceress warned that the item looked like junk and could have a bad result. However, another fusion was successful, and the girl gave the item to her friend as a gift. Ain improved the Dark Ghost Commander's robe that Hen had previously worn. The friend was pleasantly surprised by the gift and the girl's attention. Ain was pleased with herself, but she also wanted to thank her friend for his efforts. Meanwhile, Tartar, who had been expelled from the guild after all, was pining in the square. The commander was extremely unhappy that the boy posted a video of the defeated boss online. The commander was humiliated that he could not defeat the boss, and now everyone knew about his defeat. The commander was angry that now a stronger guild had come to this territory. The guy took everything the commander said too seriously and was very upset. Tartar believed that leaving the guild was the right decision, and the only good thing he had done. But fortunately, his older comrades, Dust and Arneg, came to support him. The boy was so touched by the care from his comrades that he burst into tears again. Tartar was worried about the mood in the guild, but his friends assured him that he shouldn't worry about it. It turns out that the men also left the guild because they didn't want to work with a master who throws tantrums like a child when he loses. In addition, Tartar's comrades asked him to delete the video, and the boy decided that it was because of information about the boss. But the thing was,